Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library. And today I have a great guest on because, there's something very important, I think, that as a accounting and a finance person, that I tell all of my clients that I'm working with, whether you're a small business or a large business, is, the finances for your business and the finance for your personal life are two separate things. And you have to have a plan from just like you have a plan for your business's finances, you want to have a plan for your personal finances as well. So I wanted to bring on Steven Hughes, the founder and the CEO of No Money Inc., to talk about, the great things that he's doing with No Money Inc. and to talk about, his perspective and the advice that he gives in that area. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely, my pleasure. Now, before we jump into No Money Inc., I mean, tell us a little bit. What was your background before No Money Inc.?
So my background, I was actually studying human resource management when I was in college, and it became my senior year, or my second senior year, I should say, because you usually want to get that extra football season in. But my second senior year, I started looking around for jobs, and as I was applying to more human resource jobs, I realized that that's not the industry that I wanted to work in. And I also had experience doing sales while I was in school. I had two internships that were actually directly into sales. And so as I started interviewing more, I decided that, okay, well, maybe sales is a good idea for me. And I had five job offers in 2010. But at the same time, I had failed the class that I needed to pass to graduate. So I just dropped out of college. I jumped into the working world. But really, before that, I started realizing the financial mistakes, or really the financial experiences that I was facing at that time. And so I'm a first generation Jamaican American. Both of my parents are from Jamaica, and in Jamaica, like, education is a big deal, right? Just like any other immigrant parent that you will hear from. But my parents always made it a point to let us know, like, education is free in the United States, and we should study and do the best that we can because of that. Because in Jamaica, if you don't get a scholarship to go to high school, or you don't have money to pay for high school, then you're gonna have to pick up something. And so my dad, he's been an electrician since he was 12 years old. Reaching landings and roofs and fixing wires. And so, as I knew education was a big deal in our household, financial education really wasn't that big of a deal in our household. It wasn't something we talked about often. And I don't fault my parents for that, because they could only teach me what they knew. But, it was 8 of us in a 3-bedroom house, sometimes 10, depending on who was here from Jamaica. And, every now and then we had some challenges when it came to paying the bills and keeping the utilities on. And so, because we never talked about money, I really took those experiences with me to college, and I made every money mistake possible. I had 7 maxed out credit cards. I had overdraft fees to the point they closed all of my bank accounts, told me to ease on down the road. I had 2 repossessions because one wasn't enough, of course. I got evicted, and I was like couch surfing a little bit, to the point where my best friend's landlord was like, "Yo, if he stays here anymore, you're getting evicted."
Oh,
So it was
wow.
all these things that I was facing financially, and even pulling my credit and starting to look at that, my credit score was under a 400, and I didn't even know it could go that low. And so, really facing like financial rock bottom when I went through all those things, I had somebody in my life who told me that I should start reading a book that could kind of show me where I needed to go. The book that he recommended was The Richest Man in Babylon. And at the time, it shaped a lot of the ways that I could think about the mistakes that I've made, because in the book, there's a character who's just making mistake after mistake when it comes to managing his money, just like most of us are. And that became something that he learned from. There's a lesson in every mistake that he made. And so I started realizing and turning my financial life around when it came to just understanding what I did wrong and owning up to it, and then moving from there. And then I started sharing like how I was fixing these mistakes, because I realized there were a lot of people our age who either, one, made the same mistakes and they wanted to avoid them at all costs, as far as like never making them again, but they also wanted to fix them. And then there were two of the other people who just never made the mistake and they never wanted to make it, right? And so as I shared my stories about what I did financially wrong and then what I was doing to turn it around, there were a lot more people who were, coming to these conversations or asking me more money questions. And I remember I started my organization in 2014, No Money, it's spelled KNOW. And when we started it, it was really to think about like reserving bigger spaces because there were but so big spaces you could reserve as an individual in the community. And from there, just having a couple of community events where, we hosted a documentary viewing party and then had a talk back with some financial professionals from the community. Then we started creating curriculum because I realized that some of the mistakes that I had made were after I'd went to like some of these free, have you ever been to like a free workshop from a bank? Like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, like
I've never been to one.
like
I've
a
heard about
volunteer.
them before, but I've never been myself.
Okay, so I went to some of these workshops when I was younger, but nothing was really sticking with me, right? And even the things that they were mentioning, everything was just being said, and it was kind of lost after we left that space. And I remember even after I left college, there was a workshop that was it was marketed as a financial education workshop, and like when we were in there, they were talking about HELOC mortgages. So things were just flying over my head because at the time I didn't really understand what a regular mortgage was. And so I think I saw a gap in financial education where some things were too basic, but things were basic, but they weren't things that people could take action on. And then other information was just over people's heads and wasn't really, meeting people where they were. And so when we started creating financial education curriculum at No Money, it was to marry like the experiences that I had that were negative and getting back on track, but also with the thought of, how people think and what we've experienced as adults now and then children when we were younger, as far as how that plays out in our money lives. And then also thinking about all the things we've heard and internalized, to this point and building from there so that we can, take action and not have to worry about seeing a cycle of financial miseducation or illiteracy.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think is interesting, is, when you're going through that process of, owning up to the mistakes that you made, because one of the things I run into with some people, especially with business owners that have made, financial decisions that weren't the greatest, was how did you deal with that, I guess, with the not condemning yourself or not beating yourself up for the mistake and really being able to switch gears into, hey, now what can I do about it? I've already made the decision, but what can I do about it going forward?
Well, I don't want it to sound like I didn't beat myself up because I did. So when I was making the mistakes in real time, like I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I made this mistake, whether it was, missed a credit card payment or didn't communicate with my creditor for my car to let them know like, hey, this payment's going to be late so it wouldn't be repossessed. Or just the different things that I was doing with my money, like as far as spending it, right? And so I think I definitely beat myself up about it. I don't want it to sound like I didn't, but after I beat myself up about it enough, I got to the point where I saw enough like that things could be different. And I knew a couple of people in my life that things were different. They didn't have the same financial experiences I had. And so that's what really kind of helped me start turning things around. And this is 2020. So it was like 7 years ago, right? I was working a desk job. It was after I'd left my first sales job, or really I got fired from my first sales job. And I think that when I was sitting at that desk job, I started listening to like motivational speeches every single day from Les Brown, from Jim Rohn, from all of these different people, right? And just to recondition and retrain my mind, because one thing that I talk to people often when we're talking to Black college students about, building their real legacy of financial literacy is that it starts with your mindset, how you think about money. And we start breaking down some of the money myths that we've heard, like money is the root of all evil. And so I think back, like even before I started the company, just to get myself together, like I had to start retraining my mind. And, you know, when it comes to finances, whether it's personal or business finances, that's like the first thing that the first hurdle you have to jump over, right? Whether it's making money and getting over the hurdle of charging people, or managing your money personally to hit your financial goals, and even setting those financial goals. I think all of those like came to a head when I was really, you know, cranking up and getting started.
Gotcha. I'm always interested in that, that part of that process, because it's one thing to do something because you have a passion to do it and you enjoy doing it. But when you start to like build an organization around it, I mean, when you start to put a little bit more formality around it, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I did was I wanted to get more experience in the financial education space. So the first thing I started was I was volunteering for a nonprofit here in Columbia, South Carolina. And as I was teaching financial education classes to students in middle and high school levels, I just kept thinking about all the money mistakes I made when I was in college and the people around me who did the same. And so it's like, something that we don't talk about enough is the financial responsibility that you get when you become a college student, right? Or the financial responsibility that's put on your shoulders, because 3 months before you hit college campus, you had to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. And now you can sign for tens of thousands of dollars of loans, right? And so I thought about like all of the things that you could do wrong when you got on a college campus, and how people aren't catching us before those mistakes happen. And so I remember I went to the organization. I was asking like, hey, does the projects or programs look like for college students? And they said that they didn't really have anything that they focused on. And so it wasn't until I realized there wasn't, things that were related to college students that were actionable, that made people take action when it came to changing the way they manage their money. That's when I started to create my own organization, because I didn't want to start something that was already out there. And I knew if I had a similar mission that other people had in the financial education space, I didn't want to splinter resources in that regard. But I realized that no money was really serving college students when it came to financial education that met them. And it was customized for like our community, as far as Black college students, that whether you're on an HBCU campus or a tech college campus or a community college campus or a PWI, like we've had some shared experiences that go into how we think about money or how we feel about money. And I think that knowing that was the gap that I needed to fill up until now, that was the big thing about, not staying at that financial education nonprofit that I was volunteering for, and doing something different. And when I first started No Money, I'll tell you that we started doing financial education for a bunch of places, like not just colleges and college students, but we were doing financial education for middle school and high school and nonprofits, and even the Salvation Army is like one of my favorite workshops we've done, because it was with all of the seniors, and they loved the class. It was super active as well. But I think that when we really niched down and focused on who I really wanted to serve and who the organization can really benefit at this point. And that's really focusing on Black college students now. And so that's our focus going forward. And that happens in business, right? You start and you think that you're serving one demographic or target market, and you may pivot. And so I don't know if I've pivoted more so than narrowing down our focus, but that's a big thing that we've done as as No Money has gotten older, 6 years old now. So about to be in elementary school heavy, so I'm loving the direction at this point.
Also, I think that's a very valuable point, because, it's something that I think all entrepreneurs kind of, whether you're doing a for-profit business or you're doing a for-profit business, is like really getting clear on who your target audience is. Because I think that's one of the things that, even in myself, I struggled with, my consulting that I did, even with the podcasting, is just like figuring out like, hey, who is your audience? Because you don't want to leave anybody out. But I think, like you said, you start to crystallize and figure out, what, I'm the best fit for this demographic. Like this is the demographic I'm the best fit for. So when you think about, your demographic, when they're reaching out to you to figure out, hey, what is it that No Money has to offer through whether it's services or products? What is the experience going to be like for them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that the big thing that we wanted to do for No Money is to create an experience where people, where we set a foundation for truth telling, and people could say like, I have had this problem with money, or I have had this problem with managing my money, or I've been getting in my way on finding the opportunity that works for me, or I need help with that. And so I think that was the big thing when we started doing events. So like part of how we started were community events. And before the pandemic, we were still doing 4 events a year that weren't targeted for college students, but they were specifically for the community. One was a vision board party and financial seminar together called Boards and Bank. And that would be at the top of the year. And then we'd also have an event called Perfect Sense that really helps or really talks about your mind and your money. We bring in a therapist in the past, and we're gonna modify these events for like virtual engagement, of course. But the first thing that we did, we started with community events. Then, as far as serving our target market, especially on the college and university side of things, because more institutions are thinking about how they can educate their students when it comes to financial education. Like, no one wants for students, or I won't say no one, but I don't want students to take on student loan debt, not knowing what a payment's going to look like when you leave the campus, or having ideas on how you can fund your college education without taking on student loan debt, right? And so I think as we wanted to get that information out, the best way that we have found is doing workshops and really doing a high engaging facilitation in these workshops. So they're high energy, so we always play games. We always are focused on helping people take action right there in the workshops. And whether it's, helping college students think about mapping out their top 3 financial goals, and them also recognizing they've never taken conscious or specific time to say, this is exactly what I want to happen in the next 1, 2, or 5 years. Or if it's how to build a business. We have a youth entrepreneurship masterclass that we do. And so the other thing that we do outside of community events and workshops that have now moved virtual is that we have ebooks that we've used to kind of extend the lesson, right? Because maybe we can only be in front of you for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but there's so many other questions that you may have that's connected to this specific money topic. Like, okay, you set your financial goals. Well, where do you go from here? Or what's the next step? Or after you hit these goals, how do you set more goals? Like, what's the next step to that? And so those are the 3 things that we've really focused on: community events, workshops, and content as far as ebooks. But this year, we're really cranking up our social media presence as far as how we serve students, because, I know that content is consumed on all of these platforms, and they're turning into educational platforms. Like if you're on Instagram, depending on who you follow, you may get a online MBA out here. And so another thing that we've done, our inaugural Bankroll Summit, it was a 1-day money conference for college students, and we started that in 2019. We took the year off in 2020 with the pandemic. But this year in 2021, we're definitely going to make it a virtual experience and bring more colleges to the table. We started with mostly covering the state of South Carolina, but we're moving across the Southeast to get more people involved and get speakers from far and wide who can help Black college students break up with broke and really find their niche on what they want to do that's, coupled with their profession when it comes to making money outside of their full-time job. And so I'm excited to see like what things that our college students tell us they need that we can continue to provide for them in regards of financial education and resources.
I think that's awesome. And I think for the university, I mean, there's a lot of value for them in the respect that, for most universities, I mean, they survive based off of the charitable giving of their alumni. And, if your students are going to your school and they're getting into financial trouble while they're a student, they're not going to have the resources to support the university when they graduate. And they're also not going to have, like I said, that essential skill set that you guys are teaching, which is how to handle your money, which I think is fundamental to every aspect of your life. I mean, after you get out of school. So I think what you guys are doing is great. So where can people find you guys online, and where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, so they can find us online at knowmoney.org. That's KNOWMONEY.org. And they can find us on all social media platforms at No Money Inc. So that's KNOWMONEYINC. We're mostly active on Instagram, but you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well. And if people are looking for me, they can find me at No Money Steve. That's KNOWMONEYSTEVE.
Awesome. Now, also, one of the questions that I like to ask, every guest is, I mean, when you think about, the organization that you developed and being mission driven, usually I would ask, what's two pieces of advice you have for other entrepreneurs, but I think I want to adjust it based on, some of the feedback you've given. It's like, if someone's interested in starting a mission-based organization, what's, based on your experience, what's two pieces of advice you would share with them about that?
So the first piece of advice that I would share is to go get experience. So I think some people who they see a gap in a community need, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and figure this out." Don't feel bad about going and volunteering for another organization, or even working for another organization that could possibly partner with you to solve this problem in your community. So if we're talking about community-based organizations, nonprofits, that's the number one thing that I would say, because I think that sometimes there are organizations that are splintering resources, that I mentioned earlier, that if people collaborated more and just decided like, hey, we have the same mission, we're going to do this together, we would see things rolling a little bit faster when it comes to progress. And the second thing that I would mention as far as starting a service-based community organization is to take count of the people who mention to you that they want to help. People who are bought into your mission and who, may be a volunteer, they may be a board member, they may be a donor, they may be somebody who just evangelizes about your mission and helps people find you that need your resources. And so I think that when I first started, I was terrible at that. People would say, hey, I want to help, keep me posted. And I'd say, oh, awesome, thanks, I will. And that'd be the last conversation we had about that. And so now I'm better about, for people who reach out to me who say, hey, I want to help, let me know how I can do it. I have three things that you can do. You can give, you can tell me if you're interested in being a facilitator and you want to volunteer or be a facilitator for us. In some situations, you can get paid. Or you can help us get connected to more colleges and universities. Like, what makes the most sense for you right now? And then in all three of those cases, you can always donate. And so that was something that I didn't do well on telling people how they can help our organization achieve our mission. And so, when you're starting out your service-based business or your service-based organization, be clear on how other people can help you reach the mission, because you can't do it by yourself. It's not possible. And those are the two things that will, make a solid foundation, especially when you're starting out.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing a little bit more about your journey, the organization, as well as the mission. I mean, and I think what the last point you shared was a great one about how can people get in, how can people help? And so what I'll do is the one last question is, how can people help No Money Inc.?
Yeah, so great question. I think that people can help us by connecting us with colleges and universities that want to help their Black college students increase their financial education and really like their whole financial wellness. And when I say wellness, I mean like the healthy decisions that someone can make in all aspects of their life. And we know that money touches every single part. The two times that I'm not myself is when I'm broke and when I'm hungry, right? And I'm not smiling, I'm not laughing, I'm not meeting people like that. But I think that even just saying that jokingly, I think when we know how to manage our resources, take care of our families and friends, that is a huge lift off your shoulders. You can start focusing on the other things in your life. And so I feel like I don't even remember what your question is now that I feel like I'm rambling now, but I know that I wanted to mention that, like, as we were talking and having this conversation, because that's something that's like top of mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The question was, how can people help and get involved with No Money Inc.?
Perfect. So clearly answering how can people get involved and help No Money Inc. You guys can go to our website. It's nomoney.org. It's KNOWMONEY.org. You can donate there, and you can also drop us a note and say that you are either working at a college or university, or you know someone at a college or university that would love to bring No Money to their campus to help their Black college students start or continue their financial education journey. And if you're interested in volunteering or becoming a facilitator, like you're a financial professional, and you want to learn how to better share your stories and experiences with our college students, like in our community, so that they can understand how money works or how money pitfalls have been experienced and fixed, reach out to us, because we're always looking for facilitators, whether that is, especially virtual right now, but in the future, I feel like we're going to return back to campuses, and we want to be able to accommodate schools that we're working with across the country.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.
Hey, it's your girl, Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Right here on RETV, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
This is Tyron
and Nicole with your weekly RATV news break. Each Thursday at 12 noon Eastern, we'll come to you with the latest news, trends, and more with a positive spin.
We know there's a lot of positive news that doesn't get reported, but we want to give you the opportunity to share your story here on RATV. If you have a positive news story you want us to share, you can submit your story to news@re-tv.net.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Relationship Entertainment Television YouTube channel. Download the new RATV Live app on your mobile device and follow Relationship Entertainment Television on your favorite social media platform.
Don't forget, make sure you tune into the RATV News Break each Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be blessed and be great.
Growing up in the church, we saw a lot. Things that people refuse to talk about. The elephants in the room. Mental illness, sexual abuse, broken families, domestic violence, and so much more. The Big E, The Elephant in the Room, is a show that sheds light on these topics. We're here to speak about the unspeakable.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week, because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?